back to the PCOS and Nutrition podcast, Tina. If you have all listened to the podcast episode, you will know Tina has previously been on the podcast before, and we spoke about the link between the thyroid and PCOS. So firstly, thank you for coming back on today's episode. And on today's episode, we're gonna kind of ties in with that previous episode which we did, and today's episode is on the possible causes of PCOS and how to go about treating them. So I'm looking forward to delving into this discussion. So on this podcast, we talk a lot about getting to the root cause of your PCOS and finding out what type you have in order to treat it and achieve hormonal balance. And you speak a lot about this too, and also work closely with your clients to help identify what is causing their problems with their thyroid and their hormone imbalance like PCOS. So there are different root causes, and that's why a standardized approach or recommendation doesn't work. And that's why the standardized treatment recommended by doctors like cut carbs or lose weight or exercise more and go on the birth control pill isn't effective. Well, we all know the birth control pill doesn't work. We said it time and time again on this podcast, and most of these recommendations never get to the root cause of PCOS, the hormone imbalance. So, Tina, can you start by identifying why getting to the root cause of your hormone imbalance, of your PCOS, is really important than focusing on a symptom?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'd like to say hi, Vespina, and thanks so much for having me on your show again. I really appreciate it, and I'm always happy to divulge more information. I think that it's so important to address that each person has their own bio-individuality, and in functional medicine, what that means is that every person, depending on their genetic makeup, depending on their journey from birth until where they are today, depending on what environmental toxins they're exposed to, depending on what kind of lifestyle they're leading, if they're getting enough sleep, if they have a lot of stress in their lives, a lot of busyness in their lives. All these things need to be addressed holistically in order to really understand what is affecting a person that has an issue with a hormonal issue such as PCOS. I deal with a lot of people with thyroid issues and autoimmune conditions, and I often see women that have a hormonal imbalance and have an issue with PCOS. And so when we're talking about looking for the root cause, I think that people kind of get obsessed with, oh, what's my root cause? What's my root cause? But it's very important to kind of look at the body holistically and look at everything that's going on in our lives individually and kind of giving precedence to the most important thing that may be affecting your health. An example I can give is a personal one. And I think for me, if I have busyness in my life, it doesn't really bother me so much. But if I have emotional stress in my life where I'm dealing with toxic individuals or people that are really trying to put me down, that really is a main trigger for a lot of my symptoms. So that's one of the many things that we're going to talk about here today, and how important it is to look at each person individually, prioritizing which issues may be causing the symptoms of PCOS, and finding easy dietary and lifestyle things that can help to alleviate a lot of these symptoms. Very important to really focus on yourself. There's so much good information out there on the internet nowadays. Podcasts we can listen to. We can listen to a lot of individuals and professionals talk about these things. But I think the main thing to understand is that if you really want to buckle down and find out what's wrong with you specifically, this is where you have to invest some time and money and work with a professional that can guide you towards that goal. And I think if I had a person like me or a person like you, Vespina, when I was going through all my stuff, I think I would have gotten there a lot faster and saved a lot of heartache.
I agree with you. I think we would have saved a lot of time and upset going through and just trying to figure everything out on your own. But I mean, you really do need to take a personalized approach because everyone's different. Everyone has different kind of triggers. And like you said, the work kind of stress isn't like a problem, but that emotional stress of like toxic people like I can agree with that. It can be that kind of trigger that can just trigger your symptoms and just send you over the edge. So it's always different for different people, and that's why you need to, like you said, the internet is a great place to educate yourself and see what people are doing, what they did to overcome their PCOS or hormone imbalance. But when it comes to actually treating your problem, you need to sit there and think about what's going on in your life, assess how you're eating, how you're sleeping, are you exercising, and how you're thinking as well, not just what you're putting in your body, but how you're actually thinking, and work from there. And obviously work with a coach as well when you really want to start introducing and changing certain dietary things and other aspects of your life. So I guess we can delve into the many root causes of PCOS. So you can start off with the first one.
Sure. There are many things to consider when we're talking about our hormonal health and our hormonal balance. And I believe that when it comes to PCOS, one of the first things to consider are blood sugar imbalances. And we all know, or at least people that listen to this podcast and are kind of involved with PCOS, understand that one of the biggest symptoms of PCOS is having insulin resistance. And insulin resistance can be caused by many different things. But for those that do not know, insulin resistance is basically that our cells are no longer sensitive to insulin, which is the hormone that allows sugar or energy to get into the cells so they can do their thing. And so when we're resistant to insulin, sugar builds up in the bloodstream, and this can cause very high and very low blood sugar. And for how many people that have blood sugar imbalances know that they have blood sugar imbalances because they tend to need to eat every 2 or 3 hours because they feel dizzy, they feel lethargic, they feel like they just have a crash in energy. And so if you have like that typical 3 p.m. kind of sluggishness or feel a drop in energy, these are all signs that we have blood sugar imbalances. And the way to address that nutritionally is to eat every 3 hours. And this is true also when we have a lot of stress in our lives. We can have blood sugar imbalances when the stress levels are very high. So a lot of people forget to eat when they're stressed, and this is important to eat every 3 hours when we're stressed out, because we're addressing those blood sugar imbalances. And here, all we have to do is mix a little bit of high quality carbohydrate with a little bit of protein or fat. A very easy example of a snack is an apple with a few almonds. In our meals, making sure to have high quality protein like wild-caught salmon with your veggies, with some green veggies, and a little bit of high quality carbohydrate like quinoa. And of course, these are very general recommendations. Everybody's different. People have food intolerances, people have allergies. So these are just very general recommendations when it comes to addressing our blood sugar imbalances. When it comes to insulin resistance too, a lot of people I find have low chromium status. Chromium is very important in addressing insulin resistance and making the cells more sensitive to insulin. So taking a chromium supplement can help in these issues. So that's the first one when it comes to one of the root causes, let's say, of PCOS.
So what are the possible causes of insulin resistance? Why do people become insulin resistant? Because it can be a symptom, but what could cause it as well?
Yeah, I mean, many things can cause it. The most common is our worldwide intake of sugar. When we look at the average person from 200 years ago, they were getting 20 grams of sugar a year in their diet, where children today are getting, on average, 35 grams of sugar a day in their diet. And so our genes and our genetic makeup is not used to all this influx of sugar. Sugar is very highly inflammatory to the body. It definitely causes things like insulin resistance and then leading to diabetes. It can cause ADD, ADHD in children. It can cause things like Alzheimer's in adults. It's very inflammatory. In fact, Alzheimer's is also called type 3 diabetes because of the sugar aspect of it. And so just our very processed and very fast diet filled with sugar and additives definitely is contributing to things like insulin resistance. Another big thing that many people may not know is a cause of insulin resistance, and I was actually taught by one of my mentors, Dr. Robert Roundtree, in getting my certification in functional medicine, is that one of the biggest things that may be causing insulin resistance is environmental toxins. And if you look at a person that has issues with hormonal issues and insulin resistance, you can definitely test for this and find out that you may have, getting into our kind of second cause of PCOS as well, is heavy metal toxicity, specifically cadmium. Cadmium is a toxic metal that can get into the body and has been shown to be associated with decreased fertility. And so, and hormonal imbalance. So a lot of people that get tested and we see that they have high cadmium and other heavy metals in their bodies, just lightly detoxing and getting everything in order, we can see a reversal in a lot of the symptoms of PCOS and also insulin resistance.
Interesting. And we're going to address more of that in the next part. And the final kind of thing I wanted to ask, because a lot of people are going to be wondering, but obviously you speak about carbs. Everyone's going to be like, I thought you can't eat carbs. Carbs are bad. What's your stance on that? Why can we eat carbs if you have blood sugar imbalances, basically?
Well, I mean, we need to address everybody as an individual. Everybody's different, and everybody's carbohydrate load, in other words, what they can accept in terms of carbohydrates, is different. And when we think of carbs loosely as, as a society, we're thinking of pasta, we're thinking of bread, we're thinking of rice, we're thinking of bagels, muffins, these kind of foods. When I'm talking about carbs, I'm talking about carbs from sweet potatoes, squash, carrots, vegetables that generally are higher in carbohydrate intake, that have more carbohydrate in them, but also give us phytonutrients that help our bodies to heal and to get better and work more efficiently. And what kind of carbohydrate? Like I usually say, stay away from white stuff and put more color in your plate. So obviously sweet potatoes and carrots and squash and spaghetti squash and pumpkin, all these things have a lot more color and offer nutrient density than, let's say, just a white potato or white rice or white pasta. These things are not necessarily what are going to help us to alleviate the symptoms of PCOS. And when we're talking that we have blood sugar imbalances, we usually also have, when we have hormonal imbalance, 90% of my patients, I see a lot of thyroid patients who also have PCOS, but 90% of them have adrenal dysfunction. And adrenal dysfunction also has to do with, too much or too little cortisol being produced at various times of the day and night. And so, and most of us, I believe, have adrenal dysfunction because we're often wired but tired. We wake up exhausted. We need coffee to thrive throughout the day. We have trouble falling asleep. We have trouble staying asleep. All these things are issues that are associated with adrenal dysfunction or adrenal fatigue. And so when we have these issues, we definitely need a little bit of carbohydrate to help us to alleviate those blood sugar symptoms. The key is where we're getting that carbohydrate from. And again, everybody reacts differently to different things. Obviously, a lot of people are gluten-free right now and in the autoimmune arena, because PCOS, there is some research that shows that there might be an autoimmune factor with that. And so definitely I would recommend people with PCOS in general, even for a month or to 6 weeks, trying to be gluten-free, because it can affect hormonal balance. And it's one of the biggest food intolerances that we have out there for whatever reason. I mean, wheat is very genetically modified right now. There's a lot of glyphosate added to wheat production and a lot more toxins there. So people are reacting badly to it. And so getting rid of that and choosing, let's say, other pseudo grains like quinoa and buckwheat and things like this are a much better way to go in terms of getting more nutrient density in the diet and staying away from inflammation causing foods. And so I think I went off on a few tangents, but just to reiterate that carbohydrates are not bad for you. It depends what kind of carbohydrates, and it really depends on what you're going through and what situation you're going through. I know we have a lot of dogmas out there like paleo diet, ketogenic diet, this diet, that diet. I always say, do not listen to dogma, listen to your body and eat real food. It's the most simple advice I can give. You know, we often tend to stay stuck to, I have to follow this dogma or I have to follow that dogma. Again, going back to bio-individuality, everybody's different. So you really have to find out what works for you.
I think we really need to go back to basics. I think we focused way too much on following a certain lifestyle or diet just because someone succeeded on it. And, you know, not to say that that approach doesn't work. It's just that you don't have to find this diet. It can just be going back to basics and focusing on those macronutrients and just eating real food. But before we move on to the next one, I remember I received this question on Instagram that I thought we could address quickly now, and that is about, are nightshade plants bad?
Oh, I love these kind of questions. You know, I get these questions all the time. Is this food bad? Is that food bad? But let's answer it in the context of PCOS or someone that has an autoimmune condition, okay? In some people, nightshade plants definitely can lead to a stimulation of the immune system to attack whatever it's going to be attacking, whether it's the thyroid, whether it's the intestine, whether it's the brain, the kidneys, the liver, okay? And in some people, that's definitely an intolerance. And so if you're following something like the Autoimmune Paleo Protocol, which I am a coach for, the elimination phase eliminates nightshade vegetables. But at a later stage, we reintroduce them to see how you're tolerating them. And for some people, they find that some nightshades are okay for them. So maybe potatoes work for them. But at the same time, they find out that tomatoes stimulate their symptoms, trigger their symptoms. So it's really, if you really want to find out if nightshade vegetables are good or bad for you, do an elimination diet. Stay on it for at least 6 weeks and then start to reintroduce after that to see if any of your old symptoms reappear.
Awesome. I think that was a good response. And I guess we covered this root cause enough. Let's move on to the next one because there's quite a few.
Okay, for sure. Okay, so the next one. I think one of the biggest ones that in our arena and our circle of functional medicine practitioners, we always say, when in doubt, begin with the gut. And as Hippocrates said thousands of years ago, all disease begins in the gut. And research is catching up to finding out that this is, in fact, very true. Now, given that 80% of the immune system is found within the gut, and it's a brilliant system, really. It's really sitting there waiting for things to leak through so that it can take care of it for you. Now, if you have issues such as leaky gut and dysbiosis are you probably need them to form any disease. And so for those of you that don't know, leaky gut is not something disgusting that you find in the toilet. Leaky gut is basically when one of the functions of the gut is to protect your organs and your blood from whatever's inside the intestines. So whatever inside the intestines can usually exist happily amongst themselves. It's called the microbiome. But when certain things start to leak out, the immune system doesn't recognize them and starts to attack and cause issues like PCOS, like hormonal imbalance, like autoimmune disease, like many things, okay? And so one of the things we definitely want to address with leaky gut. And we also want to address dysbiosis. In other words, having too many bad bacteria in comparison with the good bacteria in our gut. And the great way to do that is through diet and by eating a plant-based, nutrient-dense diet. A lot of the time we're focusing on what not to eat, but more importantly is what we're putting back into our diet and putting variety back into our diet. Don't be afraid to get experimental and just start adding stuff. You know, a lot of people focus so much on, I'm not allowed to eat this and that. But more importantly is what we're going to put back into our diet. And in general, how I start out my patients is I start them out on an elimination diet, gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, processed food-free, sugar-free. And I put them more on a nutrient-dense diet, which don't be afraid of those fats. Fats are good for hormones, you know, getting your avocados in there, olive oil, your nuts and seeds, get those good fats in there. And also to heal the gut, to heal the leaky gut, drinking bone broth, very therapeutic for sealing that gut back together. Taking collagen supplements or glutamine supplements help the lining of the gut to get better faster. Making sure that you're getting a lot of fiber, a lot of those vegetables. There should be at least 3/4 of your plate should be from vegetables, and don't be afraid to incorporate a lot of color in there. Those are the foods that feed that good bacteria to work for your immune system. A lot of our hormones are produced by these good bacteria. So it's so important to, you know, a lot of people are taking probiotics, which is great, but probiotics are just placeholders. In order for those good bacteria to proliferate and for them to do good things for you, it's really about what you're eating and getting that variety of vegetables into your diet. So definitely one of the main causes of PCOS is the health of your intestines, and working on the health of your intestines and your digestion is very important. A lot of people with PCOS also have low stomach acid production, which means that you're not going to be absorbing vital minerals and vitamins like B12, you know, B vitamins, very important for your hormones, like iron, which a lot of people with PCOS are losing a lot of blood, so they have very low iron stores. And so if you don't have enough stomach acid to absorb these minerals, also magnesium, another very important one for hormonal balance and health. If you're not getting enough stomach acid, you could be eating a very good diet, but if you don't have enough stomach acid, you're not absorbing these minerals. And if we really need to absorb those minerals in order for our hormonal balance to work out for us. And so, you know, giving betaine HCl and giving enzymes and giving some magnesium citrate to people that suffer from constipation. Constipation is a really big, how do we say it? It's like, if you suffer from chronic constipation, you probably have a hormonal imbalance, because one of the things about estrogen metabolism is that when estrogen is broken down, it's made into two groups, the good estrogens and the bad estrogens. And the bad estrogens are kind of like put through the liver and then into the bile and then into the feces so that we can excrete it. But guess what? If we're constipated constantly, those bad estrogens recirculate back into the blood system, and you can definitely get those hormonal imbalances seen with PCOS. And so one of the main things that you want to concentrate on is getting that stomach acid up to par, giving those enzymes, giving some magnesium citrate, which acts like a stool softener, and pooping regularly every single day. Very important for hormonal balance.
Yep.
All right, so one of the biggest causes of hormonal balance is leaky gut, dysbiosis, constipation, not excreting the way we should be. And so diet definitely plays a role there, and getting the right supplements as well.
And it's just amazing to think that a doctor who should kind of hopefully would know that there's a possible root cause of like a problem with your gut causing PCOS, but they end up giving you the birth control pill that basically wreaks havoc with your gut and just gets rid of all the friendly gut bacteria, and then you probably end up having even worse of a gut problem, which kind of affected me. And whenever I used to eat, I used to get super bloated, super inflamed, and then you're just like, well, this sucks.
Sure. I mean, and that's why it's so wonderful that people like you are doing these podcasts, so that people can start to be an advocate for their health and go back and tell their doctors that, you know what, maybe we should be looking at other options. And it's through us that doctors start to change. And I've seen it with my own eyes. Even here in Cyprus, people are changing. Doctors are becoming a little bit more open-minded. It's slow progress. However, it's progress. And we, don't be afraid to open your mouth and be an advocate for your health, and really ask your doctor, what are my options? What can I do about this issue? And, make them work. Yeah. Make them work hard. Yeah. Why not?
You shouldn't just because they say take this pill, you should, like, for me, I said, oh yeah, cool, I'll take it if I'm going to get my periods back. But now that I know more, I'm just like, well, that was a bad decision. So don't be afraid to stand up for yourself and be like, well, I've heard this. Isn't there another way? And if there isn't, and they don't know another way, find someone else. There's like so many doctors out there who are looking deeper and not just throwing out the pill and saying, this is the only way. So yeah, it's good to be your own health advocate. Awesome. I guess we can move on to the next possible root cause.
Okay, so since we talked about gut health, another big root cause are things like fungal overgrowth, parasitic overgrowth, and bacterial overgrowth, even viral infections. All these things, like, for example, with thyroid issues, which is a common hormonal imbalance, one of the biggest causes of thyroid imbalance is exposure to the EBV virus. So we know that as mono, or the kissing virus. And so that can definitely cause a hormonal imbalance. And another big one are parasitic infections. There are specific parasites linked to specific hormonal issues. And so kind of doing a comprehensive stool test and finding out if we do have parasitic infection or a candida overgrowth, these can severely hinder our hormonal health. So many women that come to me, one of the most common things that I ask is, do you get gynecological fungal infections often? And that's a big sign that candida is overgrowing, that we have a leaky gut, that there's dysbiosis. And so if you talk with your doctor, if it's a severe problem, they can actually try to help you with some antifungals. And we can also help with some herbal remedies, as well as with diet and getting the intestinal tract back in functioning form, let's say. And so finding out if we have any kind of these bacterial infections. Another big one is SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And that comes from also having low motility in the gut, being constipated. So bacteria that naturally thrives in the large intestine is now moving up to the small intestine and causing all these issues that we recognize as irritable bowel syndrome. And so addressing that too, either through herbal remedies or antibiotics, depending on if your functional medicine doctor feels that you need to go on that. All these things need to be addressed so that your hormonal function works better. And yeah, I think with the biggest message there is get a comprehensive stool test, see what's really going on in the gut, and then your functional medicine practitioner or coach is better able to guide you in how to get rid of that.
Yeah. And if anyone wants to find out more about SIBO, I have like a whole episode on it. Can't remember which one it is, but I'll probably just like link it somewhere, because we literally spoke about that a lot. But yeah, that's another potential one. Is there anything else you want to address with this one, or do you want to move on to another possible?
We can move on to the next one.
Awesome.
All right. So being that I am the thyroid dietitian, and there is research to back it up, definitely anyone with PCOS should have their thyroid tested. And that's just because thyroid hormone, estrogen, progesterone, cortisol, all these things work together. They're not in a vacuum. They don't work by themselves. If one is affected, the other is affected, and so on and so forth. And so one of the common things that I see in people with PCOS can be low progesterone. And this is usually indicative of a shorter cycle, excessive bleeding, night sweats during the evening, time when you're trying to sleep, hair loss. All these things can be indicative of low progesterone, and are very tied into not having enough thyroid hormone in the cells. So what you want to do is test your thyroid stimulating hormone, your TSH, which research from 2002 shows us that the optimal TSH range is between 1 and 2. So if the lab range says up to 4.5 is normal, it's not. 1 to 2 is the optimal range. Then you test your free T4 and your free T3. And again, these ranges, you want your range to be in the upper 1/3 of the normal range. That's the optimal range for these numbers. And of course, you want to test your antibodies, your TPO and your thyroglobulin antibodies, to make sure that those are in order. A lot of the time, like we said, PCOS can have an immune factor in it as well. So having autoimmune Hashimoto's or Graves' disease is not uncommon when we have issues with PCOS. So definitely check out the thyroid function there. And when it comes to supplementing with either, if the doctor's going to put you on medication, please know to ask your doctor that there are many different kinds of medications out there for thyroid hormone. And just like food is different for everybody, different medications work better for different people. So there's people that do just fine on the synthetic form of thyroxine. There's other people that do better on desiccated thyroid hormone, which is a bioidentical form of thyroid hormone. There's other people that do better on just T3, which is the active form of thyroid hormone. Most people, from my experience, do the best on a compounded form of thyroid hormone, T4 and T3, which is usually prescribed on the doctor based on your bioindividuality and what's going on in your body.
Awesome. And again, if anyone wants to find out more about the link between thyroid and PCOS, like there's another whole episode. I have that in the show notes, and it's also on the YouTube channel. But just so we don't go, obviously can't cover it again, just listen to that episode and visit your doctor and get the necessary test done. I wanted to ask a quick question before we move on to the next one, because I remember we received, because you covered some of the hormones, and I got a question. Someone was like, oh, they now, because they over-exercised, they now have a low estrogen and low LH and FSH. What does this person do? Do they just cut back on the exercise and try and nourish their body more, or is there a specific thing that can help increase these hormones?
What a nice segue into the next root cause of PCOS. That was like perfect. All right, so one of the biggest causes of PCOS and hormonal dysfunction, as we addressed before, is adrenal dysfunction. And what a lot of people don't know is that the ingredients needed to make things like LH and FSH and estrogen and progesterone are the same ingredients used to make cortisol, which is one of your main stress hormones. Now, under normal circumstances, we want cortisol to be high in the morning, which gives you that bright-eyed and bushy-tailed feeling. You want to stay awake in the morning. And as the day goes on, cortisol decreases and tapers off around 10 at night because you want to be relaxed and melatonin, your sleep hormone, to kick in so that you can sleep well throughout the night. And so what typically happens in people that there is such a thing as over-exercising, doing too much, people that are consistently stressed out, not getting enough rest, not eating the right diet, their adrenals are depleted. They can't make any more cortisol because those ingredients are depleted. And so if you're using a lot of your ingredients to make those stress hormones, you're going to be making stress hormones, and you're not going to be making your hormones that are needed for optimal hormonal health. This is why a lot of high endurance athletes or high performance athletes that are women don't completely stop getting their period, because the body says, okay, well, we don't want to bleed right now. It's a dangerous thing. We need to, put the body into survival mode so that we can get through this period, and then we can go back to getting our normal cycle. And so, yeah, in those cases, if she is over exercising, definitely cutting back on exercising and probably getting into exercises that focus more on the breath and putting the body back into balance, like yoga and Pilates and stretching and things like this, are definitely warranted here and can definitely help her to go back into normal hormonal balance.
Yeah, that's the thing. We exercise is great, but like there can be this negative side where you constantly doing it, and exercise is a stressor. So if you're not giving yourself time to rest and recover, your body's gonna feel in that state of stress all the time, and it's gonna be like, well, it's not the time to have a child because we're living in a dangerous time. So they just shut off those reproductive functions, and that's why you might lose your hair and experience other kind of symptoms because your body is just like not looking to have a kid or take care of your nice hair. It's just trying to focus on looking after yourself. So
and now that you said hair, a very good point. When we're extremely stressed out, from whatever the cause may be, over exercising or whatever is causing our stress, cortisol decreases your stomach acid. So when you eat under times of stress, you're not getting those nutrients, especially vital for the hair. And guess what? Your hair starts to fall out.
Yeah. Cortisol. Stress is just it's just
number one killer.
Yeah.
Yep, for sure.
It's the worst. But I guess we just got to find a way, because you can't run away from stress. Stress is everywhere. And obviously there's different types of stress. So there's the emotional stress, the work stress, but then there's the stress caused by, the environmental toxins. So you just really need to be aware of things. So try and manage the emotional stuff and reduce the environmental toxins, and just stop focusing on diets and over-exercising, because it's just more stress. So it's hard, don't get me wrong, it's super hard. But if you want to achieve hormonal balance, you have to make these small steps. They're all baby steps, and eventually they lead to big results. So I know it's hard.
And that's a really good point. I mean, we all need stress. Like, a good amount of stress is actually healthy. Just like I give the example of a lion that's on the hunt. During that time, he's under stress, right, to hunt and go find his food. But what happens after he eats? Just hangs out and chills, right? And I think the biggest mistake most of us make is assuming that we have to do nothing in order to be healthy. That's not true. We need to focus on getting the rest that we deserve to get. So if we're going from 8 in the morning until 7 in the evening, guess what? After 7 in the evening, it's time to chill out and relax. Yeah. and get ready for bed, and create a healthy bedtime routine that helps the body to know that it's ready to rest and really to get high quality sleep. And so if we make an effort just to do these little things, which to many people can seem like huge things, but just breaking it down and saying, okay, well, tonight, I'm usually used to going to bed by 1 in the morning, but tonight I'm going to go to bed by 12:30. The ideal is to be asleep by 10:30, right? In order for our hormones to be working at their best. And so, getting a good bedtime ritual in place where we are not staring at screens that are tricking our bodies into producing more cortisol is a great way. For people that love to watch movies to chill out, you can actually buy amber glasses off the internet for quite cheap. And that kind of takes away the white light from our eyes, and we can chill out and watch movies like that before we go to bed. But doing the same thing every night, just like we would do the same thing every morning, is very important to our nighttime hygiene and to making our hormones work better for us. Don't forget, a lot of our hormones, our female hormones, like kind of rest and reboot and kind of kick in during the night. Thyroid hormone is naturally produced in the middle of the night. So if you're not getting the right kind of signals when you're sleeping and not getting good rest, that can definitely affect how your hormonal balance is going to be balanced or unbalanced.
And research shows that A lack of sleep can reduce your insulin sensitivity, which can lead to insulin resistance, which is one of the causes as well. So you just need to prioritize it. I mean, the minimum, I can't even speak, minimum amount of hours you should sleep is like, I mean, it differs person to person, but like at least 7 to 8 hours is like, that's like you should be getting. And, you know, just go to bed decent time and then wake up in the morning. Don't just, oh, I need to work all night, I need to grind, and I need to do this and do this. No, prioritize your sleep. It's important.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of these lifestyle factors we take for granted, and we're waiting for a fancy pill to make us feel better. But a lot of the things is just like, you know, if we break it down to really layman terms, dude, don't stress out, get enough sleep, don't eat junk, surround yourself with people that make you happy instead of people that make you sad, and you're good to go. You know, like just like common sense, really just simple things that we can employ in our everyday routines really makes our hormones feel happy. And I think one of the last things here I wanted to address that we kind of touched on were food intolerances and nutrient deficiencies. So definitely, if there's foods that can be bothering you, they can cause more inflammation in your body and cause those hormonal issues to get exacerbated. And so the common ones which we've mentioned are gluten, dairy, too much sugar, a lot of processed foods. And it doesn't mean that everybody has to be gluten-free. It doesn't mean that everybody has to be dairy-free. But what you want to find out is if those things are bothering you specifically. And the way to do that is through elimination diets. So you can exclude what you want to test for 6 weeks and then start reintroducing to see if any of the symptoms come back. When I talk about symptoms, we're talking things like headaches, bloating, indigestion, heartburn, diarrhea and or constipation, things showing up on your skin. Your skin is one of our biggest organs, as everybody knows, and whatever's going on inside the body is also going to show up on our skin. And so kind of looking out for those intolerances is key to understanding what works for your body. And keep in mind too that people have thresholds. So for example, if we're talking about bread, if we eat organic wheat bread 3 times a week, somebody can be totally fine with that. And then if they go on to 4 to 5 slices per week, then all the symptoms start to reappear. So these are things to kind of keep in mind and work on to understand what really is working for your body and what affects your body. In terms of nutrient deficiencies, some common ones I see for things like PCOS, again, we mentioned earlier chromium, magnesium, iron, your B vitamins, very important for hormonal health and reproduction. And these all stem from the health of your gut and how much stomach acid you're producing. So getting that up to par will really help with a lot of extracting a lot of these nutrients from your diet.
And I think a lot of people are deficient in vitamin D, especially in London.
Yes.
There's a lack of sun.
Yeah, but even in Cyprus, we have a lot of vitamin D deficiency, and it's because people avoid the sun like the plague, unfortunately. And, so people are indoors a lot and they're not getting enough exposure to sunlight. And all you need to get the right amount of vitamin D every day is to be outside during the hottest time of the day, so let's say around noon. Expose most of your body for as long as it takes for your skin to turn a little pink. Not sunburn, just a little pink. So if you're more fair, obviously this may be 3 minutes. If you're a lot darker, it could take up to 20 to 30 minutes, depending. And so that's how much vitamin D you would need for the day. Definitely during the winter and in countries where the sun doesn't see them so much, supplementation is definitely warranted.
Definitely. And I think a lot of people are scared. Like a lot of people can just sit in the sun, but like you've got to be careful because the sun, can cause skin cancer, like we know. So it's just not spending too long and just going outside and just letting the sun see you, which that's how you're going to get your vitamin D, apart from supplementing. And the vegetable, mushrooms are high in vitamin D, so just eat a lot of those.
Yeah, and I think what's remains to be said is that anything in extreme is not good for the human being. Anything in extreme, like if you eat too much, that's no good. If you eat too little, that's no good. If you're out in the sun from the morning until night and don't wear any protection, that's no good. So everything is a balance, and the key to health is finding your balance. Everybody as an individual, the right diet for themselves, the right kind of motivation for themselves, the right purpose in their lives for themselves, being surrounded by the right people in their lives, getting enough rest, getting enough sleep, getting enough exercise, but not too much exercise or too little exercise. And there's not a one-size-fits-all approach. There's a lot of great advice out there from which to learn and extract information and really understand what's going on with your condition. However, the way to really heal is to work with somebody that knows how to guide you towards what is best for you.
I completely agree. And I was just going to say that once you stop fighting yourself and your body, I think balance is so much easier to achieve, because I think whenever you say, oh, it's all about finding this balance, and I was like, how do I find balance? I don't know how to find balance. And I realized this because I was doing all of that stuff where I wasn't eating enough and I was over exercising. And then you literally just stop fighting yourself and stop trying to, for example, lose weight and look a certain way. Once you just say, like, I don't care, I want to do this for myself, I don't care I don't want this perfect body, a so-called perfect body that doesn't even exist, and just focus on taking care of your body, nourishing it, then you start to realize you can achieve balance. And that's what I've learned throughout this journey of healing my PCOS and my, body struggles and eating disorders and everything. It's literally just stop fighting yourself.
And I think what you were mentioning is so key. It's about being grateful. If we're grateful for our bodies, because if there's people that are born without limbs. There are people that are born with severe ailments when they're born and they have issues. If you wake up in the morning every single day and you say, wow, I have a functioning body and I'm grateful for this body, your whole presence and whole outlook and health start to greatly and vastly improve. It's such an important thing to be grateful for what we do have and work with that. And it's key. There's actually some research that shows that pessimism is linked to increased inflammation. So if you said it in the beginning of our talk today, Vespina, that the way you think also affects how our hormones are going to ultimately be. And so if you're constantly negative, that's causing inflammation and causing our periods to be abnormal and for us not to feel good. So it all starts with waking up, feeling grateful, giving thanks, and moving on from there during the day.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people be like, well, how can I be grateful if everything I want, I don't have? Like, I don't have a period, I got hair on my face, I'm losing my hair, I've got all these symptoms. But like we have addressed and like we keep talking about is, while PCOS may be genetic, you can, overcome it. You can balance your hormones and live a symptom-free life. While PCOS might come back, like the symptoms can come back if you go back to your old ways of where the diet and lifestyle that triggered those symptoms, you can overcome it. You can balance your hormones and live a symptom-free life. So just remember that, and don't feel like the victim that, oh, my life sucks because all of this. You can overcome it. You just have to, change that mindset, change your lifestyle, and just be committed, be consistent, patient, mostly be patient as well, because this thing doesn't happen from one day to the next. You don't just wake up one night and have PCOS. You don't just, and then wake up and you're treated. So just be patient and, be positive as well. And is there any, last piece of advice or tip? I guess we kind of wrapped it up quite nicely, but is anything else you want to, on a final note?
On a final note, I think that what you just said is so important. And I think that we live in a world that we are all very cynical and skeptical, unfortunately. And we've gotten used to the fast pace, which means that we want answers yesterday. But I think that even if you, from today, just start changing one thing, you'd be surprised at how quickly a lot of your symptoms can start to get better. And my challenge to all of you listening out there today is change one thing today. And you will be on the road to recovery pretty darn quickly. You'd be surprised.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that's a great way to end the interview. And final thing, how can our listeners connect with you? Where can they find you?
Sure, you can find me at The Thyroid Dietitian on Instagram or Facebook, and you can also find me on my website, thethyroiddietitian.com.
Awesome. I'll have everything linked in the show notes. Highly recommend that you follow Tina and check out her website. And yeah, just, have a look around on the blog and everything else. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast once again.